I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. So this is a pretty special episode. Meg Lee Chin is really a kind of visionary. I mean, I could leave it just at visionary, but particularly of the, sort of underground DIY music and culture scene, who has used her educational background and practical experience in music, arts, video production and tech to, sort of push the boundaries and break new ground with, for example, her music, but also, digestible multimedia experiences that for me, kind of like sort of supports humanity, resistance, equality, and also individual empowerment. And all the while with this, kind of counterculture pretty much sort of playing the lead role in how she goes about it. Her one thing that stood out for me was her DropUMentary, which is called England's Mask, a series of 4 short films, really sort of exploring the state of play in Britain, in particular why it's in danger of losing its creativity and innovation, and kind of needs to change its trajectory to bring back what really is its biggest asset, and that's its people. So it's an honor to welcome Meg to I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee. Meg, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, that was a really good intro. You must have been reading some of my stuff.
I was. What's been
somebody's read it. Wow.
Somebody's read it, I know.
Documentary, amazing.
Oh yes, it's fantastic. Yeah. That was about what we said about sort of 3 years ago. Was it about that came out?
About 3 years ago.
Yeah. And with that, you, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you appeared on a panel at the Tate. Was it the Tate?
Yes. Yeah, at the Tate Gallery. Yeah. A talk about Brexit.
Yeah.
It was as is usual in the art scene. Everybody on the panel, all the other artists besides me, were all Remainers, and I'm the rogue Brexiteer.
The rogue Brexiteer.
Really, outrageous stance to take if you're I'm like a lifelong lefty,
Yeah.
So I'm amongst this grab bag of people that are supposed to be, right wing and racist and all this sort of thing. But my take on Brexit is a real sort of I guess old style lefty point of view, in that it's anti-monopolies, anti-big business entities, such as the European Union. So for me, in the same way that indie labels were supposed to break off from the major label sort of thing, for me, Brexit wasn't about all issues of racism and this and that. For me, it was more about devolving power in governance to small. I mean, I think the UK should devolve even further. I'd like to see America and China and Russia break up. Frankly, they don't have to break up. You can keep a sort of loose sort of central government, but it really has to be loose, in that anything that can be made at any laws that can be made at a local level should always be made at a smaller local level, rather than the natural trajectory of power, which is that you get groups, you get entities, and suddenly, like corporations, they consolidate, so that eventually there's just one government. Eventually. So, I mean, that you hear all the conspiracy theorists talk about one world government, and there's no smoke without fire. And I think what it is for our times is that we are in danger with so much monopoly over resources and power. I mean, you've got Elon Musk, one individual, who's decided that he's going to litter the skies with tens of thousands of satellites, and that might be all good and fine, and he's a very smart man, but where's the democracy? So it seems the trajectory is towards a consolidated power, even more than, well, certainly in my generation, it
Mm,
seems like that, especially now with Silicon Valley, you've got a ridiculous amount of scary, scary, scary consolidated power. And
mm,
I, sorry, it's interesting that Elon Musk is afraid of AI. I think it's kind of his own projection,
mm.
because the antidote to AI is, of course, to democratize data,
Yeah, yeah.
so that instead of a few entities, big countries, the US, Russia, the European Union, or Silicon Valley, Facebook, Google, instead of a few
Mm,
entities having access to all this ridiculous amount of data. I mean, it's crazy.
yeah.
Um, the data should be more available to everybody. I think that would be true. I'm advocating a medical blockchain.
Mm,
So what you have is you have a worldwide ledger, and GPs, hospitals, doctors, and patients can tap into this ledger anonymously and
mm,
post all their data. Because at the moment, what you've got people going to, like, say, their doctor's office, and they get some kind of a drug or a pill or whatever, and they go home, and the doctor never really follows up on whether it worked. Well,
mm.
with a worldwide medical blockchain, all this data would be transparent and available to everybody, but
Yeah.
it would be anonymous, so you don't know the actual people.
Mm,
And
mm.
I think that's the way to go for the future. I don't think it would have been the European Union, which is, of course, really, really even more consolidated power and
Yeah.
really, really difficult to penetrate.
Yeah, you're right. It's interesting you mentioning about that kind of democratization, and I don't know if you've heard of there's an institute out in kind of like sort of think tank institute out in California. I don't know if it's in Silicon Valley. It's called Institute for the Future, and one of their people, Marina Gorbis, has developed this kind of concept, which I think it's a sort of extension of universal basic income. It's called universal basic assets,
Yeah.
where it says, like, basically there's kind of these sort of three categories of assets. There's your private assets, people that you own stuff. Then there's public assets, which is like kind of open spaces, parks, things like that. And then there are these what they call what she calls open assets, which are basically, yes, kind of blockchain, these sort of ledgers which contain your medical data. And it's about everybody has a need for those three categories of assets to varying degrees depending on what their life is, and at the moment that just isn't happening. And UBI, I think, is sort of part of that. It's a really interesting sort of theory. I think they've kind of created this sort of framework where you can take it and play with it depending on your sort of particular sort of situation. I mean, I guess there's kind of meaning countries and things like that, but those sort of ideas, I think, are what you were talking about is the really interesting stuff about how you actually get on the road to equality.
Yeah. Well, it's I think we'll never get rid of hierarchy with human beings, but what we want to avoid is huge, huge organizations where the power is concentrated at the
At the
top,
top.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and to whatever degree we can devolve power downwards.
Mm,
Um, so you shopping locally is good for your local economy. Well,
yeah.
voting locally in local politics is really important as well.
Mm,
I'm not saying you can't have, worldwide mass movements of stuff, but it would be more networked, and the shape, instead of resembling a pyramid shape where you've got all the
yeah,
power at the top, and then you get the police class and the soldier class, and all
yeah,
the way down. Instead of that, you've got networks, so it looks more like the web. So it takes
yeah.
full advantage of the ethos and the shape of the World Wide Web. And we live in really interesting times,
Mm,
because it's like we've got a real window of opportunity
yeah,
to grab hold of this technology and make it work the right way.
yeah.
But the danger, of course, is this consolidation. Um, that we see in Silicon Valley, because you know, right now Google knows more about you and I
than
than anybody, more than
anybody.
your more than your
Yes.
significant other, more than your parents, more than your best friends. Google
Yeah.
knows what you've been doing 5 minutes ago, you know.
Totally, it's really sort of scary, isn't it? I mean, think about that kind of tech and sort of power of Silicon Valley. I always thought that take out Amazon for example. I mean,
Yeah.
In sort of concept, a kind of like a sort of marketplace to allow creative businesses to get access to the world and to sort of sell the products. In principle, sounds kind of great. It's okay. Well, you have this, but the model that sits behind it is just not changed, because the basically the money just kind of goes to
Yeah, so
kind of
that he can
one
mess
person.
around and fly rocket ships for no particular purpose other than he wants to fly rocket ships. It's
Yeah,
but concentrated into one hand. But the opportunity is there to do so
yeah,
much more. But that's what happens when you've got. I mean, the model that a lot of people are aspiring to in our modern times is Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos.
yeah,
And the idea is, you get there to the top. The thing is it's not I don't get me wrong. I'm not like at the other extreme, communism,
mm,
like I said in my video, there's a sweet spot, and this is the
yeah,
mistake people make with ideology, is they join camps and it becomes their identity.
yeah,
I'm a socialist. Oh, I'm a capitalist. And they take on this this suit, this persona. This is what I am. And from
yeah,
there on, I'll vote like this. If anybody votes differently, oh well, they're another
mm,
tribe. They're another.
mm,
This is a really big problem, because in fact there's a sweet spot between these ideologies.
mm,
And but the way we seem to function is that we form teams in order to get anything done, which was necessary in the past,
yeah,
because especially with consolidated power, if you've got power consolidated in a few hands, and if you
mm,
want to enact a sort of change, you can't do it yourself. So you have to form a big organization. In order to have strength in this organization, you need
yeah,
the soldier mentality. You need lots of people to join the group and
yeah,
enlist and take on the ideology. We're all socialists. We're all Brexiteers. We're this is what we are, and they move in mass. And
yeah,
again, that's another one of the byproducts. So when you've got concentrated power politically, it means you have to form larger and larger groups. If you have to form larger groups in order to make the large groups stable, they have
yeah,
to be quite rigid, with a very rigid uniform and code and
mm,
set of ideology, and you have to kind of stick with this for years in
yeah.
order to sort of get it to happen, and that's kind of a problem.
It is, yeah. I agree. I mean, the thing is that some of these kind of boxes and labels that we like to put things in, or label things that, like you say, you are a socialist, you are a communist, you're kind of like fascist, etc. The world is sort of infinitely more complex and sort of nuanced now than it has been. Well, certainly, kind of since I've been alive and can remember. And I always think also, some of the words that we use, some language, is almost like it feels like it's redundant, or it's been sort of hijacked in some way. Like democracy, for example, has started to mean a very different thing to
Yeah,
perhaps what it did 30 years ago, even. And
yeah.
and it becomes, I think, it sort of becomes problematic, because then you become identity, like you mentioned about identity. That becomes your identity, where the closest thing that you can say to sort of describe yourself is X, and it's like, well, it's not quite right, but I don't know how else to do it.
And you have to keep that uniform on, because we're social animals. We form
Mm,
very tight bonds with other humans. You get close to people in your groups, so it's really hard to think independently and think for yourself,
mm,
because
mm,
you come together for these groups with a certain, I guess, political aim. And, from there on, you're kind of tied at the hip and, everybody wants to stay connected. So you tend to act like each other and think like each other and vote each other. So, that's a problem. And I think, hopefully if we can move to, if we can use technology the correct way, which was, better at the start of the internet when it felt like a real free and open place.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's becoming really sort of consolidated. I mean, the power is really getting entrenched. And like Wikipedia now, oh my God, what a nightmare
Yeah.
they become. I mean, they just are the internal infighting and the politics within it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really become, what word can I use? I don't want to use fascist because that's so overused. But
Yeah.
it's so entrenched. The
Entrenched.
power. Yeah, yeah. It's and I mean just crazy the sort of rules. So
going back to when you were younger, I'm really interested, kind of like whether your influences and sort of how you started to sort of form who you are now and your ideas and kind of interest in music and tech and culture.
well, I think I was a little kid, 6 years old, when the Vietnam War was going on. And I was the only Chinese, well, half Chinese kid in my school. And, as you can imagine, it probably similar to like if you were a Muslim child going to school after 9/11, I was seen as the enemy. And, the kind of thing I got as a 6-year-old were like, not all people, the vast majority know, but there, there were still these people that would see me as dirty, um, like an animal, not human. And I was sort of 6 years old, and I was telling somebody about that the other day, and I sometimes talk about it flippantly, because you don't want to relive those awful memories. You don't want to go back there all the time. But I did venture back there a bit, and the person I said, "Wow, that's really, really heavy." And I suppose it's affected your music, Meg. I can hear it in your music, sort of thing. And I thought, wow, it kind of, sort of, this crown of thorns is a crown of jewels, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm sure there's other people that have experienced while they were children, real, just traumatic outsiderness, I suppose.
Yeah.
And well, it does make you kind of tough. I get to be a little bit more of an individual because I'm fairly brave in that I can stand up in front of a room full of people and hate me, and talk to them, and maybe unconsciously. I might even slightly seek it out a little bit unconsciously, just because you get these things that pathways in your brain that they form who you are and your reaction to things. So I think this crown of thorns is a crown of jewels, they say, and sometimes really horrific trauma can be used in a way, I suppose.
Did you find that sort of resilience was a something that you had to, or that you constantly sort of had to work at?
Well, I didn't, as a kid, I didn't like when people kind of regarded me as kind of like, I mean, grown-ups, like a dirty animal. And I didn't even know what Chinese meant, to be honest. When I was a kid, I'd look in the mirror and I'd think, well, how do I look different? I thought I looked the same as my cousin. It wasn't until we were 12 and trying on eyeshadow that I realized that when she put eyeshadow on, you could see the beautiful green
Mm,
eyeshadow. But when I put it on, because my lids are kind of hooded, it would disappear. And that's
mm,
when I realized, wow, that's what they're talking about.
mm,
So yeah, but like I said, I wouldn't wish it on anyone now, but
yeah.
it was a terrible thing. And unfortunately, it will imprint itself in your sort of body, in your nervous system,
Mm,
and probably in maybe fight defensive mode a bit more than other people, but more quicker on the draw. Those synapses, go a bit quicker when I'm under attack, or if I think I'm under attack.
what was your sort of response to that in terms of the kind of like people that you gravitated towards and in terms of your sort of friendships and
Yeah, I hung, I tried to hang out with the bullies, really.
yeah,
And as I was growing up, but some of the people that were terrible to me when I was little became my best friends.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's the thing with kids. They're adaptable.
mm,
So, I just, you know, I guess it's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, I suppose.
yeah, yeah,
But you learn how to sort of, you know, not be the target.
mm,
You just figure out how to survive,
yeah.
basically. And it's a good survival skill. Makes you.
So absolutely, yeah. No, you're right. It's an interesting one, that isn't it? How that Stockholm syndrome. I totally get you. That's almost like that survival instinct, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. But I mean, not everybody. I mean, the other thing is, to be fair, I had lots of protective cousins, had my
Yeah,
Irish cousins, and they'd be ready to fight anybody. So and they were quite loyal, you know what I mean? So I did have lots of cousins. So
yeah,
that was that was really lucky. They weren't always around,
mm,
they weren't always around, but if they were around, so it wasn't I wasn't a complete victim all the time. And
yeah.
I was really lucky, looking back, I was really
Mm.
lucky.
What about sort of musical and cultural influences? I mean, it's sort of talking, kind of arts culture. What were your sort of early influences? Um, growing up.
um Ballet.
Ballet, yes, ballet,
Classical music and ballet,
fascinating.
so when we lived in Taiwan, there was a period where I was very, very isolated. There were no other kids around. And we lived in a house that was shaped like a wedding cake.
Mm,
Very top floor was it was like kind of like a castle, you
yeah,
know, each floor was smaller than the other. And the top floor was just a single room, a very small single room. And that was my playroom, and it had a balcony around it. And around our wedding cake house was a high security fence.
right.
And outside of that was the Taipei slums in the 1960s.
Mm,
So they don't have slums in Taipei anymore, not like that
mm,
anyway. But they probably still have, think about, India. So it's
yeah.
bamboo huts, no electricity, no water, and that's what we were surrounded by.
Mm,
And these are kind of like my people, but I was kind of separated from them because any half white kid would be
mm,
seen as kind of rich and
right.
get snatched basically back then, you know. It would be kidnapping. So I wasn't actually even allowed to play with the kids. I'd
Mm,
look out at them playing, and they'd look up at me admiring, thinking, lucky spoiled princess, they'd think. And I was thinking, oh, well, I'm sitting up here alone, So I just danced. Escapism.
yeah.
So classical music and ballet for me. It wasn't until I moved, our family moved back to Massachusetts, to
Yeah.
Pembroke. And, I got into the 70s, sort of dazed and confused type of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that movie was even though that wasn't Massachusetts, or I mean, the other film is Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that sort of describe my sort of upbringing, So yeah, so really, we're talking two worlds. We're talking, on one hand, I'm the rich princess, and
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm the dirty, filthy chink.
Yeah.
Our people they're the enemy, slanty-eyed, because they were the enemy. You'd hear the
Yeah.
news reports, and I didn't connect that. I had no idea what it was about. I just knew there was a war
Yeah.
going on, and it was confusing for me because the good guys and the bad guys both looked like me.
Mm.
You know, there was the Viet Cong and the uh, whatever, the other side, and I'm still confused, but I was confused when I was a kid, didn't know the difference. And yeah, so all I knew was it was just really, really confusing. But
It is. It's.
all
I
I
can
knew
imagine.
was, certain people really hated me.
Yeah.
Just looked at me like I was, filthy, disgusting. And I suppose that kind of
Wow.
makes you want to sort of like rock star too, because it's sort of like, you feel you feel like nobody, and you either sink or swim. And so
Mm.
of course, as a kid, it's not an easy route, so you get attracted to wanting to be, the person who people admire and look up to,
If
so.
if it's not too sort of personal a question, how did that affect your self acceptance?
I think, I think my sisters were pretty good.
Mm.
And I think, it was tough because I could never really tell my mom about what was going on at
Yeah.
school because I didn't want to hurt her. I knew
Yeah.
she'd be really upset, and she'd be kind of powerless with her hands tied because what can she do? I mean, pulling me out of school wasn't an option.
Mm.
It wasn't all the time. The thing is that I became a bit of a teacher's pet. I mean, I adored the
Mm.
teacher, and it was only scary. It was scary on the playground, though. But thank
Yeah.
God it was a divided playground. So it was the girls playing together back in those days, and the little boys, it was divided. Because I
Yeah.
used to look over there at the boys' playground, and they were a lot more violent than the little girls.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and there was another kid I was the only Chinese kid in my school, so I was the enemy. But there was
Mm.
a black boy in my school, and whew, I used to feel bad for him
Mm.
because he was a boy, so he was over,
On the other side. Yeah.
well, sort of like barbaric
Mm.
area.
With the boys. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Did with the kind of the classical and the ballet, was that I mean, was that something that you left behind? That there was a sort of phase as you sort of got into more, let's call it, kind of underground DIY music.
Well, so in Massachusetts, um, it was sort of 70s music. It was
Mm.
70s music. And I think I probably started liking the rock music because of my sisters. I had there's a big age gap between my sisters and me,
Yeah.
and, about 10 years.
Mm.
So they were listening to sort of like, the Beatles and the Stones and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So and then my mother listened to 1950s music.
Mm.
So I had all that, you know,
Yeah.
music, and so of course I think I was a troubled teenager. There was no doubt about it. You know,
Yeah.
I became a bit of a juvenile delinquent. It was really difficult to
Mm.
reconcile the two worlds I lived in.
It's fun. I mean, it's funny. It's interesting because I was, when I was growing up, I was classically trained, so I played the cello when I was a kid
Ah,
until I was 16, and I was sort of, I felt like I was sort of forced into it, by my dad. I'm an only child. I don't have any brothers and sisters, So much like this light that's shining on me, it was kind of like sort of spotlight. That's what I felt like. And I carried on doing it, and I did it to sort of quite a high standard. But I gave it up when I think it was 16, and I couldn't bring my love of punk rock music to the cello back in the kind of early mid 80s. It just
Oh, I
didn't
know.
just didn't work. Of course people do it now, and it's kind of like, if you do that, it's like fantastic. You kind of merge the two worlds. But at that time, I just couldn't do that. So I hear what you're saying about I had these sort of two worlds, but of course, I'm a kind of white male, and I didn't, I obviously, had a huge amount of privilege when I was sort of growing up, so I didn't encounter the sort of things that you did. But it's interesting having those kind of like worlds of things that you're interested in that either don't quite gel together.
Yeah. Well, no, it's I think it wasn't so much the music that was the conflict. I think the conflict was maybe one side of it was the guilt, of in Taiwan, because I'd see kids my own age like really skinny from starvation in the street. God, you don't see that growing up in the States, So that, and then the completely different side of things. I mean, the neighborhood where I grew up in America could probably be best described as like blue collar. It's kind of a blue collar sort of neighborhood. So it was more of a rough neighborhood. So it really was two different classes in a way too. So I think it made me very aware of class and very aware of sort of society as well. So I don't know if classes, I that's the only word I could really think of it is or wealth, class. It's the only word.
And sort of being in that environment, and almost, I guess, did you feel like you were sort of starting from scratch again? You sort of moved from Taiwan over to sort of Massachusetts.
Well, Taiwan was a heavy place for a kid, in the 1960s because of all the poverty.
Yeah.
So, I've always been kind of grateful for living in the West, because I know what it could have been really, really easily. So, but still, I can't just sort of like enjoy all the fruits of the West. I do feel like some kind of an obligation. I do still feel a little bit of guilt, I suppose. Which is good. I'm glad I feel guilty. Everybody should feel guilty. A little bit anyway.
A little bit of it. I think we all kind of carry it, don't we? I think it's, I guess, so does it ever leave you, with some things that you've experienced or done, I guess sort of coming to terms with it is a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one thing that would be interesting is, now that I'm older, I know that money doesn't make you happy. Well, I certainly knew that when I was a princess in the balcony in Taiwan. So I knew that, these kids were playing together and I was alone. So from their eyes, this was a sort of pinnacle to aspire to. And I guess everybody should experience being very rich once in their lives, and everybody should experience being very poor. Or not even just that. How about privileged? Everybody in status. Everybody should experience. I mean, Andy Warhol said in the future, everybody will be famous for 15 minutes. I think everybody should be famous for 15 minutes. I think everybody should get the sort of like rock star experience once in their life. Yeah.
Mm.
And well, they can be addicted to it, you know, or they can kind of decide, you know, this doesn't really make me happy. This isn't what it's cracked up to be, you know.
Do, do you think that, you know, people should have that experience in order to almost satisfy that curiosity, or
Yeah, I
that
think
kind
so.
of like, oh,
Yeah, I think,
aspirational kind of
yeah,
thing?
yeah, everybody should, you know, experience both extremes if possible. I
Yeah.
think make for a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, in the sort of the music business, you know, over the years, I know this is a very kind of broad question, but what what do you think it's taught you? I don't know if it's
Oh,
even possible to answer that.
fantastic. No, you know, being able to experience that, you know, like my first little experience taste, you know, was in Russia when our band Crunch went to Russia.
Crunch. Yeah,
And Pravda, which is the word Pravda means the truth,
the
were
truth.
calling us the rock stars from the West. So it must have been true. We had like champagne brunches and
Yeah,
you know, we were meeting poets and playwrights and politicians, and they were having banquets in our honor, you know, treating us like big celebs. And then we came back to London, and we had a gig booked at the Stick of Rock in Bethnal Green. And
yeah,
we said, let's cancel. We can't play in Russia and be huge rock stars and come back here and play at the Stick of Rock in Bethnal Green. And Bibb said, no, you know, we gotta stick to our word. And so she wouldn't cancel it. So we had to play the gig. And I think it pretty much broke up the band because we were in Russia, you know, it was like Beatlemania. Like we'd
oh
have
wow,
escorts, police escorts and stuff, you know. And then we're playing at the Stick of Rock in Bethnal Green. There's like two drunken men
oh my,
at
oh
the
god,
bar, and that's our audience. And we went through, you know, bringing our equipment down and this and that. And I just thought, you know, this is so weird. I'm the same person, you
yeah,
know. You're the same person when you're a nobody. You're the same person when you. And what it is when you're a celebrity, a star. I mean, this is my view.
mm,
You're kind of like a silly little puppet that somehow the ruling culture has decided to dub you. You're my little pet, and you're my little starling. We're gonna create you a bit like the Wizard of Oz with smoke and mirrors. We're gonna have the best makeup artists and best the the best musicians will play on your album, darling. And they sort of like elevate you to this. And you play the game because you think, okay, you know, it's
mm,
here or it could be down there in the slums of Taiwan. Okay. So
yeah,
you know, so you play the game, and I think in order to keep it up, you got to delude yourself and believe that you actually are as wonderful as this, because you know, of course, you know, nobody stars. I mean, okay, that's different from the art. Art is
mm,
sublime. Music is sublime. Creativity, human creativity
yeah,
is, you know, the best, the
mm,
greatest reason for living. You know, it's something that you can have a love affair that lasts for years. It's sublime, but that's different. That's completely different. And I still have that strong love affair. You know, with the
mm,
art, with the music. You know, the beauty, the
yeah,
escape. You know, but the machinery
yeah.
is a whole different thing. Celebrity and stardom, it's it's really a con. You know,
It's this institution again, isn't it? It's
yeah,
the big, you know, kind
ex-
of
exact,
systemic.
exactly. And back to the consolidated power. You know, these that you see that are so wonderful, they have armies making them wonderful. You know,
Yeah,
they have like a walking, they live their lives with a walking entourage and a walking huge like underlying, you know, just doing everything for them, the publicity. just making them larger than life, and all they have to do is come out and pretend that's what
Yeah.
they are. It's that pretty. and but I don't want to be too cynical about it, because I don't want to separate it from the art,
The art
you know,
itself, the creation.
which
Yeah.
is beyond human weakness and vanity and
Mm,
ego and it's beyond all this rubbish. And I think, like, everybody should have a chance in life to be very, very rich, very, very poor, very, very high status, very, very low
mm,
status. At the same time, everybody should have an opportunity in life. I mean, everybody on the planet to be an artist. And
yeah.
that really is the the more important goal for the human race. It's not,
Mm,
it's okay, Jeff Bezos, Ellen, going to space or whatever, because they always wanted to. I suppose you could call that art. That's their desire. Yeah.
yeah.
But, instead of a few people being artists, it's like Andy Warhol says, in the future, everybody for 15 minutes. So at the
Yeah.
same time, everybody, and by art, I don't mean they should have to paint or draw or sing or anything. What they should
Mm,
be able to do is perfect what is unique to them and what they love to do more than anything else, what they're really good at. They should be able to perfect that.
mm, mm.
Um,
It's I really like that idea, and I think that the idea of this sort of counterculture and creating art. I sense there is a bit of a sort of resurgence in that coming. I mean, I mean, not that this is the reason for it, but I'm sort of part of an arts lab, sort of that's kind of based around the arts labs of the the 60s.
yeah.
And it's I'm involved with youth from Killing Joke, and we're sort of producing a kind of magazine, which is kind of music, poetry, art, kind of anything, but with a kind of counterculture. And the idea is, I'll never forget one of the things that he said about creating. He said, the first thing you need to do is call yourself an artist. That is the first thing you should do.
Yes. And
Puts it
everybody
there.
should. It really should be the goal for humankind. We've got robots coming in, we've got AI. What's the point of all this work if we
Mm,
can't free the human spirit? And
yeah.
I think, if you want to get religious about it, I think, the ability to be an artist, it's the kind of like the most spiritual
Mm,
drive that a human can be, because it's kind of like wanting to emulate, whether you believe in God or Krishna or whatever.
yeah.
It's that source, and it's trying to emulate that source of that's where the creativity of the universe, where the universe actually started.
Yeah.
So we have that drive to to be creative. So
I really love I've been for the magazine, but as part of some of the interviews that I've been doing with with different musicians who, some young, some older, some at the start of their career, others later on. I'm really interested in this sort of relationship between kind of like sound and image, and how they kind of work together. And I think when you get that, when it meshes together, it's like it can be so sort of powerful, as to what it can do to you. You talk about kind of changing perceptions, changing outlooks. That that intangible sort of emotional feeling that gives you has got to be one of the most powerful tools that there is. To be able to
yeah,
do that, it's incredible.
Freud talked about the sex drive, but he didn't talk a lot about the creativity drive,
Mm,
which is, and he talked about it in terms of procreation, I think,
mm,
reproducing. But he didn't talk about, how strong the drive to be creative is, and the real the real barbaric thing we're going to look back at our times, hopefully we will look back at our times and say is like, all those people toiled, and they toiled their lives away for really meaningless goals, like acquiring material possessions, really meaningless, when they could have spent all that time, just this human creativity, which I'm still in awe of. I'm still in awe of I don't like us humans, yeah, but I do like what we create. I admire and respect what we create. I mean, sometimes how we are, I'm not too thrilled with, but I do worship and admire our species, for that.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I mean, that is one thing that we are sort of quite resilient at that, at sort of continually, in the face of these sort of obstacles and sort of adversity of continuing to kind of create.
Yeah,
it is there.
I know. Yeah, despite everything else.
Despite everything.
Yeah. It we come through in the end. We redeem ourselves.
I mean, one sort of area I think that you've been that you've sort of spoken about, which I touched on the very introduction, is sort of personal empowerment. And how do you see that we can kind of almost kind of take things back and sort of encourage people to start thinking for themselves and creating for themselves?
Oof. Yeah, it's a really difficult one. I mean, just simply education and make people aware of. I mean, we're all sheep. I mean, we're a sheep-like creature. It's almost like human being. We're like little puppy dogs, staring up at the stars, wagging our tails, wishing our master would come back. And in the meantime, if he doesn't come back, a few of us are cheeky enough to step up to the plate and say, well, I'll have a go at being the god, I'll have a go at being a charge. I'll have a go at being Bill Gates or Elon Musk or a mover and a shaker, a CEO. I'll have a go at running, being powerful on planet Earth, but you scratch the surface, and it's the Wizard of Oz. I mean, the Wizard of Oz is just the best movie for that, because this all-powerful Oz with this smoke and mirrors, he was just an insecure, feeble little man, behind the curtain. Just, he wasn't all powerful. He needed all these things to make himself feel powerful. But he's actually a nice man too. A nice, feeble man.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sort of, and one way that you've that I noticed that how you put your messages across is with humor, and kind of making people laugh about it. It's almost like it just makes it so obvious, so much more obvious, when you do it with humor, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I had a boyfriend once that was a comedian, and I just thought, he gets away with so many more things than I do, and you can you can make it into a joke,
Yeah.
And it's a good defense against bullies too. I always say I've got mild Tourette's. It runs in my family. I mean, the O'Leary family. There's a few of us that have it. My uncle, stood up in a Catholic church at a funeral and said, I've always had a lifelong, hatred of the Catholic Church, but we've got mild Tourette's in that. I call it mild Tourette's in that you get an impulse to say something, and even though you should shut your mouth, you should really shut your mouth. You can't.
You can't.
Your mouth. Yeah, do it. It's kind of like, don't swear.
Yeah.
I gotta speak.
Yeah.
And so I do music instead, and I
Oh
perform.
my. How do you how do you keep your kind of your own creativity, kind of still fresh, I guess?
Um,
What are
well,
your kind of like, things that influence you, that motivate
it just it, it just started when I was a kid
you?
in the playroom alone. You just have to make stuff up, and I've just
Yeah,
not stopped.
yeah.
So it, it it's just what I do.
It's just what you do. It's kind of
Yeah.
natural.
I like making things,
Mm.
whether it's computer programs or songs or videos. I just like making things. So I like creating things, building things and creating things.
Do you have any kind of fear of risks, or kind of worries on with what you create, or
Oh
is
yeah. Well,
yeah,
we have a really good song called Rain, and I was, it was done with the band I was in, Techno Fear,
yeah,
in San Francisco in the 1980s. And I was listening to it the other day, and I thought, oh, this song has to be recorded properly, and I need to do a video to it. So I contacted Joe, the guitarist, and
mm,
Becky, and Joe was going to play me the guitar track in San
yeah,
Francisco and send it to me, and I was going to resurrect Rain to the best I could because I felt like it really needed to be heard.
mm,
Well, he found out that I voted Brexit, and he just recently, I had insomnia the other night because I was so upset. He sent me a text saying, "Fuck off, I won't work with Brexiteers." This is
right,
a friend from 40 years ago. So I mean, that was kind of tough. But again,
mm,
Brexit is like mild Tourette's because I mean the narrative, if you just look on the surface, the narrative, because the European Union have spent decades spewing a lot of propaganda that somehow they've associated. I mean, just like advertisers can associate Coke with happy feelings, and
mm,
the European Union have associated them as a political entity with these emotional ideas like multiculturalism and
mm,
it's nothing like that. It's a political system. Give me a break.
yeah, yeah,
It's a structure of an organization. It's got nothing to do with this these values, and there's nothing within the structure that guarantees. There's no oversight in the structure that protects things
mm,
like multiculturalism and democracy and that
mm,
sort of thing. So you have to hope that they continue to be, so-called benevolent, even
mm,
though they put down all kinds of draconian laws, and
mm,
they're putting in more. I mean, they're basically trying to create a digital fortress Europe with the internet by
yeah,
controlling the internet. And that's probably the thing that scares me most about the European Union is their control over the one window of opportunity we have to actually devolve power on planet Earth and get away from this trajectory of more and more consolidated power. Because
sort of
don't forget,
consolidated control.
yeah, because the problem with consolidated power, if you've got just a few, you got these huge pyramids, yeah,
Mm,
inherently it's not very stable because there's a single point of failure at the top. What
mm,
happens if the top gets corrupt? Well, it probably will,
mm,
because it is the most corrupt that's going to rise to the top of
yeah,
those organizations.
yeah,
Yeah. And so what happens if the madman at the top of a corporate, if he goes mad,
yeah,
or he does something nuts? What happens if Elon Musk does something really nuts, you
yeah.
know, or Bill
Was it?
Gates?
Well, it's interesting actually, because there's like on that there's a movement that started. It was started by a bunch of scholars in Belgium and France, called Democratizing Work, which was pretty much about that, about kind of decentralizing the way that big businesses, well, in fact, any business, but particularly sort of big businesses are run, and giving um, far much more say in the day-to-day running of the company to the employees. It's almost like the employees are the biggest asset of the company, and they're not given any real say in how it's run. It's run by, you got your kind of CEO, CFO, and a board of, kind of 6 people. That's it. It's
They're
not
very,
a
very
democracy.
disconnected from the decisions, and they're a long way
Absolutely.
away. And the bigger the pyramid gets, the further away and the more powerless the mass at the bottom gets.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely right.
You just have to break up pyramids. I mean, it was very simple in the old days. The left used to be really anti-monopoly, but it seems like nowadays they've kind of embraced globalization because globalization has been sold as some kind of utopian, sort of humanitarian, but that's just PR, the reality isn't anything at all. The bigger organizations get, the fewer people making the decisions, the more removed they are from ordinary people. So
Absolutely.
So anyway.
That issue with Joe, we were saying about like the kind of anxiety and sort of fear,
No, it was really hurtful from a personal level because he didn't even bother asking me. He just put me into this slot like, oh, you voted Brexit? Meg's now a fascist. So that means she believes in this, that, and she's probably rich. And she, so the guy hasn't seen me in like, I don't know, about maybe last time I saw him was probably about 30 years ago. He hasn't seen me in 30 years, but he's decided because he's jumped onto this, he's a nice enough guy and he doesn't really study the politics carefully and just goes by the standard line that everybody's giving, because like I said, it's been the European Union has been sold as this multicultural, utopia, and Brexit has been associated with racists and right wing and blah blah blah, and not saying that those people aren't in. I mean, Billy Bragg said something like Brexit, not every Brexiteer is a racist, but every racist will vote Brexit. And I'd say, well, every shallow virtue signaler isn't a Remainer, but every shallow virtue, so you can't just like pigeonhole, you can't have like 2 binary categories and then decide good and evil. I mean, that's bigotry. That's the sort of thing I experienced when I was a kid. So that's really painful. So it's black and white. White person, you're good, and Chinese, you're the enemy and you're bad. You don't even get a chance to explain, well, I'm not this, I'm not just this, and I'm not fighting any war. I don't have any guns.
I mean, this is the challenge, isn't it? And almost like the kind of result of putting people into box, or putting things into box and sort of labeling things.
It's happening more and more, and a lot of
it's happening more and more.
A lot of this has to do with the algorithms that come from Silicon Valley. What they're doing is people feel the need to belong to a group, but these groups that form, the bigger they are, it's like the people at the extremes are the ones that become the identity of the group. Just like this idea of socialism and capitalists. Well, socialists will say that they have this image of capitalists, J.P. Morgan, big white mustache, haha, and capitalists will have this vision of socialists. They don't wash, and whatever. It just really simple cartoon images in their head. And if you're lazy and you don't want to take the time to actually see what other people are about, you could just go through life and just based on really simple things, uniforms, like how they're dressed, you just slap people into categories without realizing that in fact, humans are individuals and they're really complex, they're really multifaceted, and you can't just say, Same thing with color, same thing with sex, same thing with everybody. It's just laziness, really.
I agree with you. It is. It is. It's the easy thing. I guess that you know, people's attention spans are so much reduced as well that it kind of just fuels that laziness. And I'm not saying it's always intentional laziness, but it's that kind of mindset of skimming over stuff and just the brain just compartmentalizing and putting, you know, somebody looks like that, put them in that box. It still happens because people don't take the time to, you know, and people have less time for talking to other people as well. You know, again, that sort of human connection is, I don't know, it doesn't
no, for sure. And you know, it's almost like I feel really disappointed in something that like my generation started. You know, I mean, I went to San Francisco State University. I lived in San Francisco, so my world was very, very liberal and left, I suppose, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very disappointed in the so-called liberal left because they seem to have learned all the rules from their hippie parents, but not the underlying principles. So they haven't, you know, so they've learned the rules. Oh, you have to be this. If you're this, you're this. If you're this, you're this. If you vote Brexit, you're right wing. If you voted this way, you're this. If you like Joe Biden, you know, blah blah, whatever. You know, they've just decided, you know, to. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I think it's senility. Right. But yeah, no, it's such a shame.
I think when you see and kind of realize the, you know, the real kind of power that an individual has, that you know, to it's kind of huge. I mean, sometimes it's reduced, you know, it's kind of demoted in some kind of way. You know, going back to that you know, sort of issue of you know, kind of personal empowerment, that issue of democratizing work. You know, the people are the most important things and the most valuable things that you know, that we have, and we almost like just
creativity.
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, when people talk about climate change and this and that, and they're always thinking about imposing lots of rules upon each other, but instead they really should be thinking out of the box and, you know, tapping human ingenuity as the sort of like way forward, you know. And yeah, no, it's such a shame that if you think of history and you think of each individual and the potential of each individual on earth, I mean, more or less we've all been slaves for thousands of years. Because if you think about it, you know, with our modern corporate life, I mean, who gets to be really creative at Amazon? Well, that would be Jeff Bezos. You know. And then the rest of them are just little warehouse automatons. You know, now that we're entering the age of robots, well, here's our opportunity. If not now, then when? If we don't take it now, we've got a terrible future ahead of us.
Yeah,
you know,
you're absolutely right.
Yes. Yeah. So like if we don't learn, and if we don't have as this goal, this this freeing of the human individual, freeing them from work and allowing them to be artists. I mean, just everybody. And people say, well, you can't run the world on that. Oh, yes, you can. You know, you know, people will still do the things they love. But, you know, the difference between somebody who, you know, really, really loves music or whatever it is they do. They could be dog trainers and they could just really do it with a passion. You see it all over YouTube. You see people that they have a passion. They get really, really good at it. You know, the difference between how good somebody is when they're really, really, they have a love affair with it, you know, as opposed to, you know, somebody who just does something because they're getting paid.
Yeah.
You know.
So what's next then? What's sort of occupying your time at the moment?
Well, I'm kind of lucky
Apart from things like this.
Yes. Well, I'm kind of lucky because I don't need. First of all, I'm not a slave to public opinion. Although close friends can say things that hurt me. I don't care if strangers say, "Oh, you filthy, inhuman Brexiteer." But when an old friend says that he won't, play on, do this track with me, that hurts. But for the most part, pretty free of other people's opinions. Pretty free of being addicted to material possessions.
Yeah.
I'm pretty free of being addicted to like wanting to be a pop star or pretty free nowadays that I'm older of this idea that I need to have status to overcome the fact that when I was a kid, a few stupid people, treated me like I was less than,
Yeah.
So, now that I'm older, I'm free of a lot of these things. And so the world is open up to me. So I just do whatever the fuck I want. I'm working on an app, which its working title is Speakaholic, but that name's going to change. There's a top secret what the name is. It's an Android app. And basically, it's an app where I'm going to try to, I'm going to have algorithms and it'll be manipulative. But what it's going to do is it's going to try to reward diplomacy.
Okay.
So what it is you could say what you like in this app, yeah? However, you absolutely cannot engage in ad hominem personal attack. The idea is people have to learn to have conversation with others and come up with creative solutions and understandings in a civilized way. So so there's going to be a little symbol on my app. Oh gosh, I'm telling people all my secrets and I haven't released the app. Never mind. Shh, quiet. Nothing. Do nothing. So, and I'm working on some music. I've been performing at my mate's art gallery in Lisson Grove in London called the Bookery.
Okay.
And at the minute, I'm working on a birthday mix sort of track with all his mates talking on it and some beats and some music and sound effects and stuff in the back.
Amazing.
And I'm going to record an album worth of tracks. I've already got about sort of 4 or 5 done. So I've got to get another 5 or 6 done.
Wow.
And do an album's worth of videos as well. So some of them are already kind of done. The music isn't mixed. I've already got it out and I've already made videos. One of them was Savior, England's Mask, Trigger, and Beans. So so I've got to do I guess that's 4. I've got to do I guess 6 more. And I've got a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of backlog and I got lots to do. Oh my God, I got lots to do before I die. My friend Fran died a few years ago. Fran passed away, and cleaning her flat was heartbreaking because all over the place, like on her computer and stuff, were all these unfinished projects.
Right, yeah.
And some of them were things that Fran and I were gonna do, And so that's kind of. Fran died about 4 years ago. And ever since then, I've been like, do everything you wanted to do on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I never had children and never got married. So for me, it's really important that, that I did some good while I was on Earth. I leave something behind.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Everybody's got a human drive to sort of like, it might be a little bit similar to like dogs pissing to mark their territory. I was here, I was on Earth, I did a little something. Don't forget me.
Brilliant. Well, that's great to hear. You've got so many interesting things going on. It's fantastic. And listen, mate, thanks so much for taking the time, mate. It's been incredible. been really fascinating to watch you. I could carry on talking.
Pleasure's been mine. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show, and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.